From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Suni Gray. The 24th Sao Paulo Forum in Havana, Cuba is in its final day, which began with an event paying homage to Fidel Castro. Among the speakers was the former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff and former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Dr. Kenny Anthony, as well as the Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Li Qiang, and the former President of Mozambique. The leaders shared experiences from their respective countries and spoke on the importance of cooperation as it was understood by Fidel Castro, who was at the head of a number of integration projects.
I was part of the first generation that was influenced by the victory of the Cuban Revolution, a generation in Latin America that in 1959 witnessed the transformation that happened here in the island, which brought light to the whole continent. It was clear that socialism could be created. We didn't have such an experience in this continent. This was a real revolution. The transformation of one country has to go hand in hand with the transformation of other countries as well. That is what characterized Fidel Castro, his profound love for the people around the world.
Our Laura Prada is at the forum in Havana, and she brings us this report.
Hello, yes, nice to greet you from Havana. As you can see, right now is starting the final day of sessions of the 24th Sao Paulo Forum here in Havana. Right now is starting the plenary, the special plenary meant to talk and to share ideas about the Latin American thinking as Fidel Castro. Now they were displaying a video about what were the main ideas that Fidel Castro shared over the years about the need of the integration of the Latin American left forces and the importance of them being united. As you can hear behind me, they are shouting Fidel. Let's see.
We thank Laura Prada for that report. The Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro arrived in Cuba on Monday evening. The Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez welcomed Maduro, who is scheduled to pay tribute to the late Cuban leader Fidel Castro. The Venezuelan president will later attend the closing ceremony of the forum, along with other Latin American leaders, including the Bolivian President Evo Morales. We hope to bring you that live when it happens. Nicaragua's National Assembly has extended the deadline for the Truth, Justice and Peace Commission to deliver the results of its investigation into who's responsible for the violence that has hit the country since April. The commission is expected to investigate the deaths, kidnapping and disappearances, as well as the acts of vandalism against public and private property. According to the Truth, Justice and Peace Commission, violence in the country has left 247 people dead. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who's in Costa Rica now, has criticized the violence in Nicaragua.
It is absolutely essential that the violence cease immediately and that the national dialogue be revitalized, because it's the only political solution acceptable to Nicaragua.
The Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos says he will sign off on the regulations for the transitional justice in the coming days. On Monday, he met 35 judges involved in the Special Jurisdiction for Peace to promote the initiative in spite of criticisms of the way it's being implemented.
President Juan Manuel Santos attended an extraordinary meeting with the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, where he highlighted the work of the 35 judges that are part of this court for their contribution to peace building and the reparations to the victims in Colombia.
The rights of the victims, who are the backbone of the peace process, of the peace building, must be ensured, not by a court of justice, but for a system, where the court of justice is one of the components. The system is already working with all of its components.
The president announced that despite this work, many have tried to discredit the peace process. That's why he is going to impose the procedural law of special justice.
It is urgent that these regulations begin to operate, and that is why I will sanction in the next days.
The announcement was made despite the delays to which the Congress has submitted the peace agreement implementation and the special jurisdiction for peace regulations. These delays motivated Iván Márquez, leader of the Alternative Revolutionary Force Party, to decline to take his seat in Congress.
The conditions in which former FARC members go today to the special peace jurisdiction are not the agreed conditions, and certainly this must raise concerns. I think the concerns Iván Márquez has are absolutely valid.
The Interior Minister has regretted the announcement made by the FARC leader and explained what the procedure will be to take the seat.
It's his decision. We regret that he took that decision, but the Constitution says that in those cases in which a person does not take up his post, the president of the relevant body calls on the next on the list.
President Juan Manuel Santos delivered the statements just before his term ends. In just a few days, the new Congress of the Republic will have to move forward on the peace agreement implementation.
Time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Women's rights organizations in Guatemala are urging the public ministry to speed up the investigations into the accusations of sexual abuse by President Jimmy Morales. Activists believe the safety of the victims could be at risk.
Social organizations have voiced their concern about the bombshell that the former foreign minister and columnist Edgar Gutiérrez raised to the general attorney about two women who allegedly had been victims of sexual abuse by President Jimmy Morales.
The only thing we are asking for is to enforce the law and have an impartial investigation, and to not have malicious litigations, and to not underestimate these complaints that for us is outrageous, because the government is the one which should guarantee human rights. Now it's being accused of possible sex violence against women.
Lawyers for the victims say there's an audio recording and photographs in addition to the testimony of one of the victims to corroborate their claims.
There are organizations that have the experience working with female victims of violence. We have already talked with them and they are willing to collaborate immediately.
An expert in issues of gender violence says that in the country these types of crimes are common. But she says that silence is not an option, and it is imperative to find out if President Morales did or did not commit these crimes.
Many times people don't believe those who claim to be victims of sexual violence, and that is why we must start believing them. The public ministry and the Attorney General have a great responsibility to investigate and protect the victims.
President Jimmy Morales has not addressed this allegation against him. For now, the Prosecutor's Office of Crimes Against Women have already opened a file on the complaint against the president, and the investigation has begun.
Mexican teachers and campesinos are making their requests to the incoming president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Meanwhile, the left-wing leader announced that he will take a pay cut as part of his planned austerity measures.
Macario has come all the way from his hometown near the Gulf of Mexico. His native tongue is Nahuatl. But he has come to Mexico City to make a request in Spanish for all campesinos in his community.
Fair pricing and fair market, so we may feed our people. We want to take action to eradicate hunger.
Agricultural workers are calling out decades of abandonment they faced, stating that there have been 1 million jobs lost since NAFTA was signed in 1994.
We will take part in this change. We will support actions that seek to mitigate the misery and abandonment we've suffered for over 30 years of neoliberal governments.
Teachers are also calling for a press conference to present their needs to the incoming government.
I think the basis for solving these issues is dialogue, and we want the government, on every level, change the way in which they deal with social movements.
As a part of his agenda, President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced a series of 50 measures to combat corruption and increase revenue. Among these, he will slash his own salary by 40%.
We want the budget to be for everyone. We want funds to reach Ecatepec, Chimalhuacán, Nesa, Tarahumara.
2 weeks after the presidential elections, AMLO announced he will take a 4-day break before returning to work on the transition of power before December 1st.
Poverty in Argentina has reached alarming levels, but in the midst of this difficult situation, support is available for one of the most vulnerable sectors of society.
Children and young people in Argentina are growing up with an uncertain future. Hunger and despair has become the norm. Amid these difficulties, these doors are open. Kochi runs the cultural center, Saizarte, a shelter for the most vulnerable people in the poor neighborhoods of Buenos Aires.
We have been working for a few years and we are now increasing our efforts to sustain our work. What we aim to do in this foundation is to create a space for them to come and share art.
Through its numerous courses and workshops, the Cultural Center gets these children and young people off the streets to learn music, dance, photography, or a vocation to help them get a job.
Thinking about this moment in our beloved country, where reality hits us, and many people are going through hard times, our priority is the children. This is really like a small place of resistance and hope.
The plight of the most vulnerable in Argentina is growing alarmingly. A report by the Argentine Catholic University and the Ombudsman Office of Buenos Aires reveals that 54.2% of children in Buenos Aires are poor, and 10.2% live in extreme poverty.
The boys need to be trained quickly so that they have the capacity to go out and find work. That's why after each activity, they develop a wide range of skills to get any suitable job.
It is a difficult time to find work. Difficult because we have more and more young people that come from complicated situations. It is necessary to build spaces so they can work on projects collectively.
In the rural part of Buenos Aires, 63.7% of children lack housing, and 37.7% depend on school canteens for food. It's in these difficult times when indifference becomes the norm. Having a place that gives hope and allows the younger generation to dream is crucial.
The Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, or CELAC, has nominated Bolivia for the presidency of the regional organization for 2019. Foreign ministers from the European Union and CELAC are into their second day of meetings to debate multilateralism and cooperation. They are also set to discuss sustainable development and policies against drug, migration, and global challenges. Our special correspondent Gabriela Blanco has the latest from Brussels.
We're here at the European Council in Brussels, where the second work session between the European Union and the CELAC continues. During the first day of meeting, foreign ministers from both regional blocs debated over policies to improve trade, productivity, and investment, and how these measures can promote justice, peace, work, and stability in Latin America and the Caribbean. Foreign ministers at the meeting will also hold smaller bilateral meetings to talk about more specific issues.
We thank Gabriela for that report. In Trinidad and Tobago, the ruling People's National Movement lost ground on the local government level after a by-election for 2 seats. The opposition United National Congress wrested Barataria away from the People's National Movement, while the PNM retained the Belmont East seat. The seats became vacant after 2 PNM councillors died last year. The election doesn't change much on the local government or national level, but the opposition sees it as a sign that people are getting tired of the ruling party.
We say to you, Dr. Rowley, your days are numbered. You have won this seat in Barataria in 2 local government elections, not just one. And now the UNC has taken the lead.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley is hoping to change public housing in the country. She described a housing settlement known as the Pine Housing Area in St. Michael as the closest thing Barbados has to a favela. Prime Minister Mottley questioned whether the time has come to look at reducing population density in the island's housing estates. The government is expected to bring a new Town and Country Planning Act before Parliament before the end of November.
And we wonder why we have the social problems that we have without recognizing that we have literally participated in the calcification of government policy and programming over the years. So what has happened? Houses and public housing that were built in the 1950s and 60s, not even as wide as this platform probably, a little deeper, parents, children, now holding 3 and 4 generations of people. If you don't go and see it yourself, you would never know, you would never imagine, you would never contemplate. And that's the benefit of the Rubbing Shoulders program.
Staying in Barbados, undergraduate students at the Cave Hill campus of the University of the West Indies will in fact have their tuition paid for this semester. The university today said it had finally received official word from the Ministry of Education confirming that government will cover the cost. Last week, parents were told they would have to pay the tuition cost themselves and wait for reimbursement. Free university education was a pillar of Mia Mottley's election campaign. Well, time now for another break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Hours after the U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin hailed their summit in Helsinki as a success, politicians and intelligence officers in the United States have expressed outrage that Trump supported Putin's denial of any Russian interference in the 2016 elections. Republicans as well as Democrats condemned Trump for not denouncing Moscow's alleged role in the last presidential elections. The strongest reactions came from the Republican Senator John McCain, who called the summit with Putin a tragic mistake, and the former CIA Director John Brennan, who said that Trump's behavior was treasonous. So let's listen to what Trump said on Monday, which is causing a stir in the United States.
But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it.
Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, brings us more on the reactions from the United States.
President Trump is in damage control mood this morning here at the White House. He just tweeted that when he was in Europe and he met with the people of OTAN, he had strengthened OTAN and therefore is making much stronger position against Russia. Therefore, his presence at the summit with Putin was correct. He was absolutely positive that the relations gone much better. He says, therefore, that what is absolutely untrue is the way the media is reporting precisely that event, and not as the media is presented it, that has been a betrayal from President Trump regarding the intelligence community of the U.S. That's exactly what Republicans and Democrats at the Congress is absolutely blaming President Trump, say that is unpatriotic, that is shameful, that he was throwing under the bus the services, that intelligence services of the U.S., that they have, according to what they say, have proven that it was interference of Russia in the U.S. elections in 2016. And what is very interesting is the deliberate effort in the U.S. to continue to paint Russia as the boogeyman, as the enemy, as someone that is still the Soviet Union with another name, and therefore it's definitely nothing that you can deal with in a respectful way. Therefore, that is the message, and you have to remember that that permits the military budgets to grow, something that is very important for the congressmen. And also the congressmen, even though they were criticizing the policy of President Trump and his attitude in that summit, is not criticizing the person, he's not criticizing himself, but his policies, also because they are very scared that the midterms elections are coming very closely now in November, and they are in shaky grounds because they can lose their seats. We get back to you now.
We thank Jorge for that report. Workers in Amazon's largest warehouse in Spain continue to strike as they demand better working conditions and guarantees. Our correspondent in Madrid, Adriana Cardoso, has the details.
Buenas tardes a todos desde Madrid.
Today marks the second day of the workers' strike at Amazon's largest logistical center in Spain. According to unions, on Monday, over 80% of workers took part in the strike, but the company denies these figures are true. Furthermore, it appears that Amazon tried to soften the impact of the strike by hiring over 350 temp workers, which, if true, would be an illegal maneuver by the company, as it's an attempt to supplant striking workers. The Amazon workers have been protesting and calling for strikes for over 2 years as they continue to lose their rights, ever since the company put new policies into place that have reduced guarantees and have left workers without a raise for over 2 years. These practices stand in contrast with the massive earnings of the company and its owner, who is the richest man in the world. These are the reasons why Amazon workers have called for a 3-day strike, making it coincide with Amazon Prime Day, one of the company's busiest days, as unions and Amazon representatives have already been negotiating for 4 months with no agreement reached.
Former U.S. President Barack Obama has delivered the 16th annual Nelson Mandela Memorial Lecture in Johannesburg, South Africa, coincided with the 100th birth anniversary of the anti-apartheid icon. Addressing APAC Stadium with over 10,000 people, Obama emphasized how global social structures still aid systemic injustice and the exploitation of black people. Obama, the first black president of the United States, has always credited Mandela, who was the first black South African president, for being one of the great inspirations in his life.
It is a plain fact that racial discrimination still exists in both the United States and South Africa. And it is also a fact that the accumulated disadvantages of years of institutionalized oppression have created yawning disparities in income and in wealth and in education and in health, in personal safety, in access to credit.
Well, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information.